二度とごめんだ、ガキのおもりは。
ああ。
グレイソード!
Hello, and welcome to the review video of the long-awaited collab, Digimon. This was very unexpected since JP got JJK before Digimon, and we haven't missed reruns as far as I know, so who knows what this means for future collab reruns. Anywho, this REM has 23 units, and you probably heard about the new hotness, Omnimon. Gonho went with the Japanese name for some of the characters here, but for Omnimon, they went with the localized name instead of calling him Omegamon. So if you're familiar with the IP, you might not recognize some names, and this is why. Apart from Omnimon, there are some other great Digimon units that you can get out of this REM, but to make things simple, Omnimon and most of the Digidestin are the units with the most use, and unfortunately, the pull rate for the other units is a little bit high. On the flip side, since Omnimon is the badge unit, you can just exchange 14 of these low rarity units for a copy of him. So even if you get unlucky with your rolls, each pull will bring you closer to the coveted strongest leader for the foreseeable future. So let me take a look at these Digimon units. But before that, please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. Also follow my Twitch channel if you would like to see me play around with some of these units. There are 3 non-REM units you should try to get, mainly since they are free. One is the Event Rainbow Metal Exchange Equip, the Digivice, which doesn't seem all that special, but it's free, so it doesn't hurt to get it. Next, the Sync Awakening material requirement is a Pokelimon. Make sure to pick it up and max scale it since you need it for unlocking the transforming unit's max potential. You could wait until we get the Sync Tamaja, which apparently should be soon, though we don't have a set date. This Tamaja costs 500 MP and it doesn't take any latent slots. But if you Evo and the Evo a transforming unit that has used one of these latents, then you will lose the Sync Awakening and will have to purchase another Tamaja to unlock it again. Thus, save yourself a headache. Get this descended unit so you don't have to spend 500,000 MP to then possibly waste it if you ever need to change forms. The last non-REM unit is the reward Omnimon. As opposed to all of the previous free batch copies, this one can actually be used in in-game content. This version is missing the Barrel Awakening that the regular Omnimon has, and it also doesn't have 8 latent slots. So you might struggle getting enough bulk without the barrel and will have to deal with skill delays if you need a 6-slot latent on the free Omnimon. Even though this is not as good as the REM version, it is still fairly strong, so make sure to get this freebie, and that goes double for those of you that can only get one of the REM version. Check the playlist in the description below for some of these budget teams. Now onto the REM units. For this collab, I think a lot of people will be wondering who is fodder and who is not. So for the speed round, I'll be including the units that, when push comes to shove, I feel you could completely do without and exchange for Omnimons. Usually, I do like to keep at least one copy of each unit, but Omnimon is worth letting go of some units if you get unlucky with the REM or can't afford to roll all that much. These units could definitely have some uses for either ranking dungeons or farming purposes, but these use cases might be too niche for you. Puppetmon is a piercer, and he won't be seeing any use since any somewhat relevant wood team matches BDPs. Devimon is also a piercer, but he's even more useless than wood piercers since Dark is pretty much the BDP attribute. At least Devimon's equip has a mix of possibly useful awakenings, though its usefulness dwindles if you have a deep box with better haste equips. Wizardmon is at best a skill boost stick. Gonho seemingly plans to release more of these cap-breaking active skills, and the ones coming out in JP at the moment don't have any downsides like the cloud that Wizardmon gives. Metalcaster's equip might be more accessible than Wizardmon's if you want the long-lasting roulette and time buff, but I guess Wizardmon's has a fixed orb location, though I doubt that's gonna matter that much. Machine Dramon's Haste active skill allows you to system 4 of them, and since it creates 2 dark columns, you could use these as a pseudo-swipe farming team, though this system will be a bit slow since you need to reach 10C for damage. And while Machine Dramon can deal pretty decent damage in dark PvP teams, those have a lot and better options when it comes to orb generators. Piedmon is the only cleric that also breaks a shield, though this doesn't sell me on him, and even though that's unique, I don't see much use for him. He lacks the utility awakenings that clerics usually have, and even though he mostly has damage awakenings, he's not going to be doing much of that. His later swap equip isn't too interesting either, since there are other ones that can add more bulk or have way more useful awakenings. Ogremon could actually deal decent damage, and his active skill is good to counter multiple debuffs. But Lloyd and Sizzle from Code Geass is a much better option for wood teams since they also pack a lot of utility. Obviously this all depends on you having that unit. Ogremon's equip is not all that bad due to its awakenings, but the active skill leaves a lot to be desired. Piximon is interesting due to his old kit, but most likely will see little to no use. The bomb orb spawn could eat up important orbs, or if you don't use a whole board changer like Arberza, you might end up with 1 or 2 bombs that will mess up your board. This unit isn't really worth the permanent attribute absorption void. At least their equip has 4 effective skill boosts with the Power Break Awakening, so maybe that could have some use in some farming teams. Metal Cedarmon is a skill boost stick at best. Their active skill might have been good for farming if it didn't have such a high cooldown. Their equip is at least alright on Namiel teams for power farming due to its water sub-attribute and Power Break Awakenings. At the moment, there aren't that many equips with those 2 awakenings, and I've seen this equip show up in low-key power farming teams, so you might want to save this unit if you happen to have an Namiel team and plan to farm that Descended whenever the Gung-Ho collab returns. Both of these units void absorptions, but their damage is lacking. Lady Devimon's active skill does have a lower cooldown and also tackles Borshinks, while Etemon has a delayed effect at the cost of a higher cooldown. Their equips might see a lot more use than the base forms. Lady Devimon's is the only one so far with a Devil type and Levitate Awakenings. I'm not really sure where you would want to use this, but at the moment, it's unique. Etemon's equip creates a unique board with 3 light rows and 2 dark rows. This could be used for a ranking dungeon since it also comes with draw awakenings for style points. I guess it could also be used for farming, but that 5 combo animation might be very unappealing if you care about speed. Andromon doesn't have much use since he is a piercer, but like with Machinedramon, you could make a pseudo swipe system with 4 of these units. His equip doesn't seem that impressive since it's only a 20 million button, but this will be the best option in one ranking dungeon for its 10 million pings and 3 turns of pierce. So far, this equip has only shown up for 1 ranking, and you could always have a friend put up a unit with this equip, so if push comes to shove, you could get rid of all your Andromons. Leomon could close the orb generation loop in Taichi teams, sort of similar to how Benimaru works with Belem. Leomon also has a lot of skill boosts that will be very helpful to meet Tai's 39 skill boost requirements. If you plan to get 3 Omnimons and have a lot of good equips, you won't have any need for this unit. As an example, the optimal billion title farming teams use 3 Omnimons, but if your box is underdeveloped or you can't get 3 Omnimons, you could instead include Leomon in your team. So if you do get Taichi, think about whether you'll be fine getting rid of all of your Leomons. So again, all of these units could have certain uses, and I would err on the side of caution and try to keep at least 1 copy of each. But Omnimon is so insane that you can completely do without these units, and just use them as fodder. Diaboromon is a low cooldown orb generator. Their active skill is reminiscent of Arberza's, but this Digimon's active skill cooldown is 2 turns instead of 1, and it removes locks. Diaboromon is a pretty good damage stick for dark PvP teams, but they are overshadowed by Arberza and Sukuna in JP, even though those other 2 units do not remove locks. This unit doesn't guarantee enough orbs for a BDP. You would still need to run a roulette or another 1-turn orb generator to ensure 9 or more dark orbs. At that point, you're better off running 2 arcs who will give you more dark orbs. Obviously, Diaboromon is much better when there are locks, but you could work around those. And in the very worst case scenario, you'll be hoping that your 2 arcs make at least 6 dark orbs from non-locked orbs. Diaboromon's equip is a 30% true gravity, so they have farming applications. I guess the Dark Awakenings also help if you're running a Dark Swipe team, but if you're running gravity farming teams, especially in co-op, you rarely match any orbs and just kill everything with gravities. That's also why the Void Combo Shield effect might not matter all that much in that scenario. Diaboromon is exchangeable for 10 Digimon units, which is a huge scam. This unit is not worth 2/3 of an Omnimon. If you manage to roll one, I would maybe keep one for the equip, but any more copies would just go towards my Omnimon fodder pile. Even if you have no arcs, that GFE will come around every so often, like in the Player's Choice Gadfest. So there will be plenty of chances to chase him, or to even roll from the Pass rolls or other freebies. Myotismon has a decent damage multiplier, and his active skill allows you to use him as a Lelouch replacement. A 60% damage reduction shield is equivalent to 2.5 effective HP, so the comparison is apt. Though with an HP buff, you'll have to worry about fully healing to get the same value. Recovery will be an issue if you're the buff and in newer in-game dungeons, as they seem to employ the super altitude mechanic more and more. So if you're a Lelouch enjoyer, you might be better off running your full Lelouch system, since the shield is much better than an HP buff in super altitude dungeons. Myotismon does have the benefit of not being a transforming unit and also gives you a set number of orbs that guarantee a PvP. Lelouch teams might also not be as strong as they could be in NA since we don't have access to Toji, Lelouch's best pairing. Even if Lelouch teams were at JP's level, they would rather run Lelouch over Myotismon. Those full Lelouch teams are so tanky that they can stall out most HP debuffs, so again, there's less of a need for Myotismon. Izzy is a decent wood leader, but his post-transformation leader skill should have been a little bit better since wood teams need all the help that they can get. On transformation, he gives a Fortune Haste, which is handy since his best pairing Mimi has a high cooldown transformation active skill. Izzy's post-transformation active skill takes care of absorptions. Also, he can get a pretty high damage cap, but this one is restricted to on or after floor 6, and it only lasts for 2 turns on a 5-turn cooldown. His leader skill has a mix of damage reduction and HP boost, along with 5 bonus combos, which are all great. But I think he should have gotten Fua in his leader skill as well, since Mimi only brings 7 million Fua, which is not enough for some of the new dungeons. Super Fua Awakenings could definitely help with problematic super results, and these wouldn't be difficult to match since Izzy and Mimi teams can generate a lot of heals. However, this team would have had a longer shelf life if they didn't have all of these issues, as this pairing is not currently relevant in JP. Izzy's Evo doesn't have much use. His cap break isn't high, and his active skill cooldown is too long to rely on for his orb generation. So at best, this will be a targeted attack rebuffer and board expander, which usually is not high on the priority list when building a team. Again, if you need someone that does all of this, you could just run Lloyd and Cecile. Izzy's Digivice is generally a good equip for wood units, as these often lack a wood sub-attribute and BDP awakenings, though the recently buffed Woodsy equip might be more accessible and is pretty much on par with this equip. Mimi is Izzy's best pairing and has a really high cooldown transformation skill. Her pre-transformation leader skill boosts coin drops, which will soon be useful to purchase certain dungeons, like the limited time dungeons that are only available for 30 minutes or an hour at a specific time. We should be seeing this change in the coming months, so in the meantime, you could get farming endgame dungeons with Mimi and Izzy. Post-transformation, Mimi becomes an unreliable board maker, as her active skill depends on whatever you have on your board to generate your wood and heal orbs. Therefore, at times, you might not have enough orbs to match BDPs, rows, or heal boxes, especially if you don't have another unit to supplement her orb generation. In the worst case scenario, you could die if an enemy gives you an all heal board since you won't be able to activate Mimi's and Izzy's leader skill damage reduction. The best possible supporting unit would be someone with that roulette, and would you look at that, Mimi's Evo does just that. Her special looping roulette allows for faster kill board setups at the cost of giving you 1 turn of Thorn Skyfall. That actually is not much of a downside, since Mimi teams have a lot of recovery, and you can use this active skill to override longer lasting Thorn Skyfall debuffs given by enemies. I couldn't find the exact rate of Thorn Skyfall, but it does seem like it's very high, so you might have to be very careful on the next board after using this active skill. Mimi's own equip is great on her base form since she needs a BDP equip to avoid running a Piercer sub. Mimi and Izzy didn't stick around for long in JP tier list, but if you like wood teams, they are your best bet at tackling the latest endgame dungeons. Sora is a great fire TPA damage dealer with a 4-turn haste transformation active skill, though her post-transformation active skill is a bit weird in the sense that it lasts for 2 turns on a 3-turn cooldown. This more so goes for the shield effect, which you would generally want to have with 100% uptime. All of the Digidestined have at least 1 aging awakening, so their bulky teams can get away without running a looping shield. So I guess Sora is only meant to tank large hits. A small shield without permanent uptime will probably not cut it in the future, like in SN5, where the boss enrages when you break one of its parts. Bringing in another Sora to loop these effects doesn't feel rewarding since her other effects tackle boy shields and board shrinks, and these are not in great demand, especially on a low cooldown unit. As a leader, she is great with some of the existing fire combo leaders like Kalin, Andradelos, and Raytheon. These are the rare teams that do actually need piercers. Sora's Evo is almost just like Oria Pochaco, but has a much higher HP buff that is better suited to tank huge hits in new dungeons. Her equip is one of the few with a 10C and Heal OE awakenings, and it's actually the only 10C equip from this collab. The lack of effective skill boost is disappointing, but the auto heal and Team RCB awakenings could help out for some specific team. Yamato is the off-skin unit, and along with Tai, he's one of the few with double barrel awakenings at the moment. His base form has an extra boosting leader skill, which doesn't have that much use at the moment, but later on, we'll be getting some dungeons that don't have guaranteed drops. It seems that Gonho might keep doing this as they have released other transforming units that have similar pre-transformation leader skills. It is unfortunate that Yamato's pre-transformation active skill is on such a high cooldown and gives no effective skill boost. So to get this team going, you'll need a bit more planning than usual. Yamato is a very strong Water Rose leader, capable of consistently hitting 14C and above in a Yamato team, meaning that his teams will usually get the 7C Awakening's full damage potential. His active skill helps with the +3 combo effect, but since this unit's Orb Generation active skill is on a Fortune cooldown, you'll need more units to close the Orb Generation loop. Either you'll run 2 other units on a Fortune cooldown or only 1 on a 2-turn cooldown. Unfortunately, the best in slot orb generating unit for Yamato teams at the moment in JP is Ariel, but Joe is a fine replacement. The Disney collab has Ariel and Ursula, who is also another strong Yamato sub, but I think NA has an almost zero chance of getting this collab, so Yamato might not get much play in NA. Ursula is a damage and attribute absorption voider, and the next best unit for these Water Road teams is Evo Yamato. A team with Yamatos and Joes is still plenty strong, but those Disney units would add a lot of consistency and strength to these teams. Yamato's equip is meant to add more rows to these Water Road teams. Outside of that, it might not be that good since there are better haste equips that add more bulk or have better damage awakening. I would only purchase the Yamato bundle after rolling a few Yamato and Joes, since all of the decent teams that can tackle endgame dungeons require multiple copies of these. Hikari is the best cleric for Omnimon at the moment, mainly because your pre-transformation active skill ensures that you'll be able to transform TK. Hikari is a utility-focused cleric with heal OEs and 4 Ls, though she has a very random Levitate Awakening that I wish were something of more use. She can definitely help you recover assists, though since she only has one attribute, you will be constrained to Glide Elf. Her cleric effect is on a Fortune cooldown, and it gives a looping attack and recovery boost depending on the number of machine type units in your team. Usually, you can afford to deliberately keep looping this effect, but this combination of effects can come pretty handy at times. For example, in the new Billion Title dungeon, an enemy awoken binds you and drastically reduces your team's attack, so Hikari solves both issues and lets you easily sweep that floor. Her equip can be very useful in SN4 due to the add cat type awakening and the heal OE with the super altitude mechanic, if you put it on a unit that already has a bunch of those awakenings. Not to mention that the Super Fu Awakening can also help destroy half a shield. Hikari is exchangeable for GFEs, and this is the best cleric for Omnimon right now. In JP, she has been replaced with Aurora, who exchanges the looping attack and recovery spike with a looping shield. Since this unit is from the Disney collab, I wouldn't count on NA getting access to Aurora. Team building for SN5 will be more difficult without that Disney unit, but for now, she helps trivialize the new Billion Title challenge in both Omnimon and Taichi teams. Most of the time, TK will be your Omnimon pairing, as his leader skill makes playing with this team a breeze. The post-transformation leader skill gives 15 seconds of move time, 5.2 effective HP, and when paired with Omnimon, just matching 1 fire, water, and light TPA will bring you to exactly 10C. A lot of times, you can just match that and sweep almost every floor, though getting TK to transform is a bit of a hassle since you need 10 light orbs on the board. You could use certain equips to get that number of orbs on the board, but as I mentioned, including Hikari in your team is the easiest way to get TK to transform. TK brings in 2 full resists and does amazing damage, though his damage is capped to 6 billion, so he can't really take full advantage of his high damage multiplier. His auto heal active skill is not on par with others that heal for 40%, but Omnimon teams can actually heal, so this extra 30% will serve as support instead of being your main source of healing. The roulette is great to counter special enemy roulettes that might not generate all of your needed attributes. It's also extra helpful whenever your board gets shrunk, since in general, Omnimon teams do not have a way to solve this mechanic. With the roulette on a small board, you can better set up your kill boards or fish out heal orbs on turns when you use Joe. TK's Epo has niche uses as a large shield for endgame content where you need to tank a big hit. The shield destruction and void expansion are nice effects too, but altogether, a lot of teams might not have space for this unit. His equip adds cat type and increases your healing potential, so this could be useful in SN4, but if you're running a cat type equip, I would rather run one that has Team HP Awakening, as Team RCB might not matter that much, since if you have a unit with a lot of heal OEs, they will probably do enough healing by themselves. TK is exchangeable for GFEs, and if you did not manage to get one while rolling for Omnimons, I would absolutely try to get my own copy to complete your Omnimon team. Tai is the BGM unit with a leader skill that boosts rank XP. This effect is rare on units that can tackle endgame dungeons, and like with Yamato, we'll start seeing more units with similar pre-transformation leader skills that give a small boost to rank XP, egg drop, coins, and even part break drop chances in the future. Other rank XP boosting leader skills like Celine's or Polon's suck for endgame content and require to swap leaders. The new billion title dungeon gives 1 billion rank XP and it doesn't allow lead swapping. Therefore, Taichi is our only choice in NA if you want to farm rank XP in that dungeon. There are other 4 options in JP at the moment, but probably only one of these will make it to NA since it's from the Gung-Ho collab. Tai teams are also the fastest teams for the billion title challenge. You could make a system with 4 ties, but each one needs 39 skill boosts to transform, so it's gonna be very difficult to transform on the first turn. His active skill is somewhat similar to Milim's as it gives a cap break, self-attack boost, orb gen, and a shield break on a 4-turn cooldown. He is better than Milim since he doesn't need heal orbs to activate his leader skill damage reduction. So on small boards where Tai only generates 2 heal orbs, you could still survive as long as you don't get hit too hard. You will have to heal at some point though, so small boards are still an issue that requires a roulette, auto heal, or a unit that can generate fire, light, and heals on a small board. One way to guarantee activatable wards every turn in a 2-tie team would be to include a 2-turn cooldown orb changer like Leomon, but this unit is not entirely reliable since he doesn't override orbs. Another more reliable and expensive way is to run 3 Omnimons like JP's fastest teams. With those teams, you'll have permanent uptime on pierce and damage absorption effects, along with a guaranteed activatable ward. If you were only planning on getting 1 or 2 Omnimons, you might want to get at least a third if you get Tai and want to farm rank XP. The 3 Omnimon team doesn't have a way to tackle attribute absorption, but the team at least matches 2 different attributes, so you can run the attribute absorption latent on your damage dealers. Just remember that you want that latent on your rightmost team member due to how attacks are launched. I talk a bit more about the attribute absorption latent in the Omnimon team building section if you're interested. Evo Tai's active skill is a bit weird because it doesn't give you a looping roulette, which would have helped close the orb generation loop indirectly in a transforming Tai team. Sure, he could generate the roulette that lets you get heals on small boards, but you will have downtime 33% of the time. Tai's equip is a great source of damage for BDP units, as it is one of the few equips with a BDP and an additional damage awakening. If you do not care about XP farming, then maybe you won't care about Tai that much. He is strong and can tackle in-game content, but you'll pretty much need a functioning Omnimon team as a starting point. Maybe you're debating whether to buy Tai or Omnimon, and if you can only buy one, I would lean towards Omnimon if you don't have your ideal number of copies yet. The only scenario where I would go with Tai is if you got all of your Omnimons already and if you care about XP farming. I would say you can get away with only one Tai since you could pair with a friend, but in optimized billions farming teams, the leader Tai runs 4 SDRs and the helper runs the attribute absorption latent. So if most people don't deliberately put up a Tai with an attribute absorption latent, most of the helpers that you'll be able to find will probably be running a non-optimal setup. Therefore, you might want to buy your second Tai just to self-pair. Joe is the mid-priority chase as he is essential to close the orb generation loop in various Digimon teams, the most important of which being Omnimon teams. His 2-turn cooldown orb generation active skill is needed to ensure activatable boards in Omnimon, Yamato, and Tai teams, though Joe is rarely used alongside Tai. Joe overrides all orbs, so you won't die to enemies floating your board with certain attribute orbs, though Joe will only generate 2 heal orbs in 5x4 boards, so healing might be an issue if you don't have a roulette, auto healer, or a board expander. His 4Ls also allows him to recover 4 turns of assist removal. As opposed to Hikari, Joe has 2 attributes, so making 2 Ls with water and light orbs will be much easier and faster. Joe's Evo could work in Yamato teams as none of the damage dealers have targeted attack boosts, but this use case is very niche and might not warrant a standalone team slot. Joe's equip is pretty solid for water units, though the active skill cooldown is a bit on the low side. 1 turn of haste isn't particularly too useful. Good luck fishing this guy out of the REM. His pull rate isn't particularly low, but sometimes randomness is not that kind. 3.8% was also the pull rate for Gino, and I saw a lot of people say that they couldn't manage to get that Code Geass unit. So some people might get that experience with Joe this time around. And finally, Omnimon. This is currently the strongest unit in JP, so thankfully, NA now also has access to him. He now is considered to be tiers above Gino. Even the game's producer recommended that people exchange for Omnimon because he was unexpectedly more overpowered than planned. This is a 5-to-1 cooldown unit, meaning you can system 3 copies of them. As opposed to some of the other similar cooldown system, like Enku and Sakume, Omnimon doesn't generate orbs with his first stage active skill. The way you system 3 units like these is you use one unit's active skill consecutively and then do the same with the other copies, meaning you'll use the first Omnimon's first stage active skill, then next turn you'll use that same Omnimon's second stage. Then you repeat that with the second and third Omnimons. After the third's second stage active skill, your first Omnimon first stage active skill will be back up and you can do it all over again. As opposed to those other systems, Omnimon doesn't generate orbs with his first stage active skill. Not having an activatable board could prove to be deadly. Therefore, you'll need to close the orb generation loop with a unit on a 1 or 2 turn cooldown. As I mentioned before, the best in slot unit is Joe, but if you're unlucky enough to not get him, you could use some other unit like Dark Aiden or even Daywolf. You will miss out on bulk and damage if you don't run Joe, but you gotta do what you gotta do if RNG isn't kind to you. With 3 Omnimons in your team, you'll have 100% damage Void Pierce and Void Damage Absorption Shield effects as long as you keep cycling your active skills correctly. Cycling Omnimons means that one of them will get a 20 billion cap break, followed by a 40 billion cap break on the next turn. So you do 180 billion damage total in 2 turns, which is 3 times more of what you would do with 1 Geno as long as the enemy has 0 defense. Not only that, popping Omnimon's active skill every turn also means breaking a shield. With the insane damage and shield break effects, you will breeze through enemy fights where these have multiple shields. These type of enemies will begin to show up more and more. If you have tried the new billion title dungeon, then you have seen the boss Greg with 6 shields, and he will also be showing up with the same amount of shields in SN5. Some teams like Genos rarely even have a shield breaker, so this is just one more way in which Omnimon soars above the rest. Apart from having an insane active skill, Omnimon also has an equally insane leader skill. It sports the highest effective HP at the moment in NA at 5.26 effective HP, and the leader skill scales damage and combos with each TPA match, meaning that Omnimon's leader skill multiplier can get pretty crazy. With 5 TPAs, a single leader Omnimon will be giving a 1024x attack multiplier, which makes Genos 55x look like baby numbers. Omnimon can easily reach the 40 billion on his third attribute with 4 TPAs alone, granted that he reached 10C and have a damage equip on him. His 10 million FUA is also great, since this amount of FUA right now is enough for the early SN dungeons. If you need more, like the 15 million that is recommended for SN5, then that number is easy to meet if you lead with 2 Omnimons, though the most common pairing is CK, who brings in the missing 5 million and also has a fixed move time leader skill. Then as to Omnimon's equip, it is solid on himself or on other TPA units for parts farming, but due to the lack of more effective skill boost from the active skill, I feel like this equip is an indulgence, and I don't think that you have to chase more than 3 Omnimons to have access to this equip. If at the end of the collab you have your 3 Omnimons and have enough fodder for a 4 copy, I would lean towards a yes on the exchange, since more options is always better. Otherwise, it does feel like overkill. Getting 3 or 4 copies of this unit might be impossible for some if you haven't been saving in anticipation for this collab, but you could still make teams work with only 1 copy of the REM Omnimon. Omnimon is a top tier leader for the foreseeable future. Even JP players on Twitter are suggesting you get multiple copies of this unit. Pat NA tweets rarely get that many replies and quotes, but pretty much every response to this tweet is saying how broken Omnimon is and how you must get him. The number of Omnimons you can get will vary depending on your resources. I would personally try to get at least 3 copies. With that number, you can self-pair, run a tie team, or you could turn one of the Omnimons into its equip for parts farming and pair with the helper Omnimon. Joe is a very important part of Omnimon teams, but he is a mid-rarity and could require a lot of stones if you happen to get unlucky. I would say only 1 Joe is enough, since the Evo and Equip aren't particularly that strong. If you like water teams and plan on getting Yamato, you might want to at least get 2 Joes. Taichi is a very strong and tanky leader, but if you don't care about rank XP farming, you could skip this bundle unit. His equip is strong, but not worth $30 in my opinion. As for the orb skin unit, Yamato, I also feel like his bundle is an easy skip, especially if you didn't manage to roll other copies from the REM. His teams usually need dupes, not to mention that these teams might not get much support in the future, since NA will probably miss out on Disney. Tiki and Hikari are must-gets for Omnimon teams. Thankfully, they are exchangeable, so if you don't manage to roll them, I would feel comfortable getting them with GFEs. Izzy and Mimi can make up a pretty strong wood team, but as it's often the case with wood teams, they'll soon fade out off the very top of the meta. Sora is an interesting unit, but might not see much use, as Fire TPA teams don't have much going on at the moment. Everything else I personally consider to be trade fodder for Omnimon. Some of these units have niche applications, so use your own discretion and think carefully before completely getting rid of your only copies. As to what collabs or seasonals are next, we might experience a drought in NA, since it's unlikely we'll get most of them. Disney followed Digimon in JP and has support for Yamato teams, but we missed out on the first run and I doubt we'll get this rerun. At the end of January, we'll probably get the New Year seasonal REM, which might not be too meta-defining as it is usual for seasonals. I can't really say much about this since JP hasn't released any details as of this recording. Hopefully this is an easy skip since I'm sure most of us will be broke after Digimon. The Gonho collab will return sometime soon. This collab has some strong units that can tackle SN5, but nothing is on Omnimon's level. There are some decent units here though, mainly the BGM Stella, who could work great with Omnimon in SN5. After the Gonho collab, JP had 2 magazine collabs. Historically, NA doesn't have a good track record of getting these, so I really wouldn't count on us getting them. Weekly Shonen is a rerun, and we didn't get the debut, so I would be skeptical of this coming to NA. GA Bunko is a new collab, so I wouldn't completely write this off, but I'm still doubtful. We have gotten the Engeki Bunko before, so it is possible for NA to get these magazine collabs. But again, we have no clue. We'll probably get the Player's Choice Gadfest soon, but I don't think this has much value for most players. Maybe those without Gin Tonic will choose to roll her for that SN5 Omnimon team that I showed beforehand, but who's going to have stones left over after Digimon? The next few months are looking pretty dreadful. I guess thankfully we got Digimon, so at least we have access to a leader that can trivialize in-game content. Let me know how your rolls go. I plan to get 3 Omnimons on both of my accounts. I originally planned on rolling in JJK in one of those accounts since he had a better box for dark teams, but since we skipped that collab and we haven't seen that happen before, I am now skeptical that JJK will come at all. Maybe I'm wrong and we'll get it somewhere down the line, maybe months later, like the last Gonho Another Story run, but I wouldn't bet on it and will instead go all in on Omnimon. I'll be doing my rolls as soon as the collab drops on my Twitch channel, so drop by if you can. That does it for this video. Please remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. I would like to thank you guys for watching, and to Dark Silencers, Hella Derpy, and Breastfeeding Obama for supporting the channel. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.